The Meta CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, says the social networking company will scrap third-party fact-checking on Facebook and Instagram and will replace it with a community-based model similar to that on X. Now, the change marks a reversal of policies put in place by Meta to stop misinformation. Those policies were criticised by conservatives in the US for going against freedom of speech.
A change of rules with potentially far-reaching consequences. Meta says paid fact-checkers will no longer be used on Facebook and Instagram, leaving users to comment on the accuracy of posts themselves. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced the decision in a video message.
We built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship.
The step is a reversal of Meta's policy, with Zuckerberg previously supporting active content moderation. Something fiercely criticized by President-elect Donald Trump and his allies, who accused the company of blocking their voices and threatened consequences. Speaking at a news conference, Trump, who was banned from Facebook for 2 years in 2021, has welcomed the move.
Very simple. Honestly, I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook. I think they've come a long way. I watched it. The man was very impressive. I watched it. Actually, I watched it on Fox. I'm not allowed to say that. Say it?
Do you think he's directly responding to the threats that you have made to him in the past?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Human rights activists reacted with shock to the announcement.
We've been investigating Meta for 4 years now, and we've actually seen them really progress in terms of their ability to detect disinformation. We looked at electoral disinformation and hate on its platform, and to see this sudden U-turn that is so clearly to curry favour with Trump and his administration is really disappointing and is likely to have really negative global implications.
Rights groups say a better solution would be to invest more heavily to improve the work of fact-checkers instead of getting rid of them. For now, the new rules will be taking effect only in the US. It's not clear if they will come into force in the EU and the rest of the world.
All right, let's get more from DW correspondent Jack Parrock, who's joining us from Brussels. Good to see you, Jack. We just heard there that these new rules only apply to the US for now. Is it likely that Meta is going to apply these changes to Europe at some point? And you know, if it did, how would the EU respond?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the concern, Anya, and that's what everyone in the European Union is looking at. Now, why is Europe so important? Firstly, because it sort of prides itself on being the bastion of tackling disinformation and ensuring free speech and protection of users through legislation in the world. It sort of sees itself as something of a world leader in that. Now, at the moment, I've been speaking to officials here in Brussels about exactly what this would mean. They say they won't comment directly because currently what Mark Zuckerberg has announced only affects the American market, the American jurisdiction. But under the EU's law, which is known as the Digital Services Act, the European Union insists on some form of content moderation, but not specifically how it is done. So at the moment, these third-party reporting where there are essentially people that are fact-checking what's going on the platform. That's how Meta's doing it. But if Meta would want to change how it does its content moderation, for instance, community notes, a community notes style system, then what it would have to do would inform the institutions of the European Union, the European Commission, which is in charge of this, and basically prove through what they call a risk analysis assessment that Meta would have to put forward that it works. That the system that they have in place, that what they're trying to do through the community notes system, where users are detecting misinformation and disinformation and reporting it, that works to make sure that content that is seen on the platforms currently works. Now, that would be quite a long process, but the European Union isn't exclusively against it being done in that way. It just says that all of these big tech platforms have to be able to prove that their systems work.
All right. Let's have a closer look at what Mark Zuckerberg said, the Meta CEO. I'm quoting here, "We're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more." So, Jack, what does this mean in concrete terms? What is Meta actually threatening to do here?
I'm sorry, Anya, I've lost my connection to you, so I can't hear the question, but I think what you're asking about is specifically about formal infringement procedures and how the European Union would try and deal with this. And essentially, what they've done so far when it relates to X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, is they have launched an investigation into the operations of X for the community note system that it operates. They're worried that risk management, content moderation, dark patterns, ad transparency, and also data access aren't being done properly by X. We don't know quite what the result of that infringement procedure would be, but it is going to be seen as something of a blueprint for what happens going forward. Now, specifically on the accusation or the suggestion that Mark Zuckerberg is trying to curry favour with Donald Trump, and that's why he's decided to change the system. Now, that is something that is pretty complicated for the European Union to deal with. What happens in the United States and the sort of clash of the titans between these big tech sort of men like Elon Musk, like Mark Zuckerberg, who are trying to work with Donald Trump and try and work forward, the European Union and the officials and the leaders are looking at that, seeing Elon Musk attack them in some senses. We've seen the Germans be attacked, the Brits, for instance, as well, the British Prime Minister. So there's a lot of uncertainty about exactly what this is going to mean, what's happening in America and spreading outside of that. What the European Union officials have been trying to do is try and say that, listen, everything's under control. We've got the Digital Services Act that means we can launch these infringement procedures and move against these big platforms if they start to spread information, if they're not doing enough. From a political point of view, how they interact with Trump is going to be interesting because Trump's threatening tariffs on a multitude of products. Will he want to fight the European Unions on trade? And on top of that, also on digital issues as well. At the moment, we're focusing on this because of the shifts in Meta and because of what Elon Musk is saying. But Donald Trump may want to try and choose his battles when he's coming to the European Union, specifically on things like trade, Anya.
Jack Parrock in Brussels, thank you so much.
Now let's bring in Matthias Kettemann. He's a senior researcher at the Hans Bredow Institute for Media Studies and specializes in regulation of digital media. He's also advising the German government. Let me ask you first, Zuckerberg said in his statement that he wants to reduce the amount of censorship and to prioritize free speech. Does he have a point?
No, he doesn't. This is just an exercise in bowing down to Trump. There is no censorship on platforms. What platforms do is they moderate content according to rules they set themselves. And he now believes that it makes sense for him politically, financially, to bow to the pressures of the Trump administration, to reduce moderation, to fire the people who were responsible for making sure the platform works more human rights consistent, and to reduce automated recognition of harmful content. It's a bad move.
So what does that do to a platform like Facebook or Instagram?
Well, we know exactly what such a move does because we've seen it with Twitter, X. There will be more hate speech. One former employee has called this the first step towards genocide. I wouldn't go so far, but quite obviously, if you reduce fact-checking, if you reduce automated filtering of harmful content, you will get a platform that is that makes everybody on there worse off. There will be more hate speech, more misogynism, more anti-foreigner sentiment. Facebook Meta products will go the way of Twitter X, and that'll be bad for the world and bad financially for him as well.
Now, the rules as of today just apply in the US. Will European regulation require a different approach for Meta in the EU?
Now, the European rules, such as the Digital Services Act, do not oblige the platform to use fact-checking services. What they do oblige platforms to do is to ensure that they delete illegal content and that they assess the risks that lie within their platforms for democratic decision-making processes, for public health. We know that throwing out the fact-checkers and reducing automated filtering of illegal content leads to more risks for democratic decision-making processes, leads to more violations of rights. So in my reading, the approach taken by Meta runs completely afoul of European rules. And we know that from the proceedings that the Commission has started against Twitter X. I expect that if those rules are rolled out in Europe as well, then Meta will also be the target of executive measures by the Commission to make sure that European digital rules and human rights are protected.
Matthias Kettemann there, thank you very much for that analysis.
Thank you.